"Hello," said Naen Murphy. "My brother Audi L. Murphy was the most honored soldier in World War II. Audi L. Murphy passed away in a plane disaster in 1971. The big secret, though, is not that. For 26 years, Audi Murphy withheld information that was known to everyone. While his relatives slept on the main floor, he resided in the basement. He had a firearm stashed beneath his pillow each night. He lost $3 million at the game, and nobody knew it. He was investigated by the government. He wanted $10,000, so he sued. $100,000. Finding out how he passed away is irrelevant. The man who murdered 241 enemy soldiers couldn't even sleep in his own bed because of this. His family was just scraping by when he was born on June 20th, 1925, in Kingston, Texas. Audi Murphy gave birth to 12 children. The 7th had been her. He was more famous for his father's disappearances than for the nourishment he received from him. Some days he was there, and other days he wasn't. This meant that 12-year-old Audi had to help out around the house. He skipped 5th grade and started. They picked cotton for $1 each day. As of right now, that's roughly $23. A family with many children had to stretch that meager budget quite far. No one else could pull it off, but it was the worst possible thing for a child. Then he took a serious blow that would alter his character irrevocably. Even though Audi was just. Mom Josie passed away at the age of 16 from complications related to heart disease and fever. He was 19 years old. Her age was just 50. Subsequently, his orphanage was emptied of his 3 younger siblings. The entire time, Audi was by itself. He was unable to move on from that point on. Loss. "She took something of me with her. I've been searching for it ever since." His words echoed through the room, leaving him with an aching void that he sought to fill by embracing uncertainty and taking chances. He was already an expert marksman, so the Army never even considered arming him. Hunger taught him to shoot. With little ammunition, every shot had to count. If he faltered, the children would go hungry. To catch squirrels and bunnies, he would use a slingshot and a firearm that I had borrowed was returned to me. According to a buddy of mine, Audi is always on the money. The fact that he excelled at it gave him complete command over his life. His proficiency in that area would propel him to the rank of the most lethal soldiers during World War II. More than 240 enemy men were slain by him throughout the fight. However, upon his initial attempt to join, nobody seemed interested. He seemed very frail and undersized. He weighed in at a scant 112 pounds and stood only 5 feet 5 inches tall. No, according to the Marines. The Navy disagreed. Even the Army itself preferred that he not fight. They pushed for him to enroll in a culinary program. However, Audi would not engage in combat while others fried eggs. He and his sister fabricated a birth certificate so he could falsely claim to be a certain age. At last, the troops surrendered. June 30th, 1942 was the start date. He had barely entered puberty. Now, he could finally accomplish his goals and release the pent-up emotions he had been suppressing for so long. His first victims were murdered in Sicily in July 1943. 2 mounted Italian police officers attempted to escape. Both of them were knocked out cold by Audi's 2 strikes. He was 18 years old. Even though he contracted malaria that week, he persisted. Sickness returned time and time again as the conflict continued. At any time, he hoped his time at the hospital would be brief. Without fail, he returned to the forefront. He descended into hell at Anio, Italy, in the beginning of 1944. Corpses littered the shoreline. Millions of people perished. Someone once described it as a place where you felt like avoid being bound by the rule of numbers. You were certain that your turn would come up soon. He crawled under enemy fire on March 2nd to approach a German tank, which he then destroyed using rifle grenades. The achievement earned him a Bronze Star. It demonstrated something else, though, beyond just accolades. He had overcome his fear. Even though he was upset, the loss of his best friend Laddie Tipton hit him the hardest. Near a farm in France was where the combat took place. Holding up a large, waving a white flag to indicate surrender, a stride was made by Tipton. They immediately shot and murdered him. There was a problem with the Audi. He charged head-on into the Germans, seizing their machine gun while simultaneously killing 6, wounding 2, and capturing the remaining. No one moved, so he continued shooting. He went on to say, "I do not stop firing while there is a quiver of life left in them." This wasn't merely an act of vengeance. Anger, grief, and the imperative to continue living coalesced. The war's course altered it. While others grew weaker, he grew stronger. He had overcome his fear of gunshots. According to the police, he had a sixth sense for determining the level of danger. The soldiers surrounding him were both awed and terrified by him. He remained silent. Had a man. No longer was he only a soldier. Aside from being warmer, he had transformed into someone else entirely. The offer to promote him to the rank of officer was rejected by him. It was his deepest desire to remain by his men's side. Because he didn't want to subject his exhausted unit to drills, he declined a pay boost. Malaria returned for a second time. He spent a lot of time in the hospital. After fighting in Sicily and Naples, he returned to the fray in March 1944. The combat infantryman insignia was presented to him on May 8, 1944, along with 60 other men from Company B. It was a privilege for individuals who had endured the most difficult times. No amount of badge waving could repair Audi's war damage, though. January 26, 1945, close to a little French town named Holtz, a 19-year-old soldier by the name of Audi Murphy rescued his people from certain death. His unit, Company B, was nearly entirely decimated. Of the 120 men, 102 had already perished just the day before. There were a mere 18 survivors. At this point, they had become. There were 6 German tanks and 250 enemy men blocking the path. Ice covered the earth. Even digging was beyond their capabilities. Nobody would aid, nowhere to hide, and nothing good would happen. Murphy, though, would not budge. When that moment came, it ought to have. It was all over. A German shell struck the M10 tank destroyer directly adjacent to Murphy's position. It burst into flames and detonated. They decided to abandon it. The fire was rapidly becoming hotter. Ordinary people would. Murphy leaped on top of it, even though they should have run. He seized the .50 caliber machine gun mounted on the tank and started firing as soon as he detected fire on the ground. He persisted. For the Germans, there were 3 possible points of impact. A plethora of projectiles were present, but Murphy remained still. Metal fragments struck his lower leg. He persisted in firing. Holding a field radio in one hand, he ordered artillery hits. He fired the machine gun with the other. For 15 minutes, he fought alone, watching as enemy forces fell, as he detonated bombs and killed them. When he began firing, he was barely 10 yards away. A shocked-looking Private Anthony Abramsky was one of his soldiers. "I thought the awful tank destroyer would blow up under him at any moment," he pointed out. But it never did. The smoke had cleared, and Murphy had killed or injured multiple people. Roughly 50 German soldiers are present. Nearly entirely on his own, he repelled an entire opposing assault. The tanks had to return when their infantry reinforcements had dissipated. His own soldiers were taken aback. What they actually witnessed was different from what they initially perceived as his death. Something that was clearly not a human. Murph was bruised, exhausted, and coated with gore. His soldiers advanced to complete the fight, and he followed suit, looking forward, not backward. After the fact, Abramsky gushed that it was the pinnacle of that level of courage and bravery is unprecedented. No one in American history had ever done what 21-year-old Audi Murphy had done. He had been awarded 33 medals by the United States military. Certainly not forever. All of the medals and decorations bestowed upon military personnel for distinguished service during World War II. Everything was in his possession. Among them were the Medal of Honor, 2 silver stars, 2 bronze stars, and 3 Purple Hearts. As an award, he received the Legion of Merit. Not even counting the medals from France and other nations, or the campaign ribbons adorned with several combat stars, are we talking about that. The French. He was a Frenchman who was famous for being a cavalier of the Legion of Honor. He was presented with 2 Quadre medals. Despite receiving a Quadre 1940 palm from Belgium, he chose not to display it. He divulged a great deal. The most recent ones have been housed at a Dallas museum. Additionally, there is 241, a number that remained with him indelibly. Murphy was alleged to have killed that many enemy forces by the U.S. Army. There are some extremely large guesses. Between 250, according to some. Even when he ordered artillery to be fired, it killed several of them. But he preferred to keep quiet about it. Upon being queried about how they arrived at the figure, he stated to the reporter, "I don't know how they know. I didn't keep count. I don't want to." Another person questioned him about the experience of murdering that many people. When asked about it, he just stated, "It didn't feel either way. Feeling wasn't a luxury in the infantry." He never made a show of it. He might have felt weighed down by it. "The only thing I've ever found I was good at was war, which is a terrible thing," remarked the man. Everything changed, though, when his likeness appeared on the cover of Life magazine on July 16, 1945. The photo of a young, freckle-faced. The 21-year-old Texan quickly became famous. James Cagney noticed Audi Murphy featured on the cover of Life magazine in July 1945. A war hero wasn't what he saw. Possibilities were clear to him. Cagney felt something when she saw the photo of Murphy, the warrior with the most ornaments. After convincing Murphy to move to Hollywood, he signed him up with his production business and promised him a fresh start in the film industry. However, issues arose rapidly. Despite their agreement, the Cagney brothers never cast Murphy in any of their films. In 1947, their agreement came to an end due to an argument. Murphy, stranded in the Hollywood Valley, at Terry Hunt's fitness center. He felt like he didn't belong there. Working in the film industry, he once stated, was not real, compared to being in the military. In 1948, everything started to move forward. In Texas and Brooklyn, he landed tiny roles, and Paradise for only $500, or around $7,000 in today's dollars. Though uninspiring, that was the beginning. Beyond that, Murphy spent the next 2 decades appearing in over 40 films and 1 television series. However, he was secretly depressed. He had doubts about his abilities. His last statement to a San Antonio reporter was, "I had one hang-up as an actor. I had no talent." All of his words were sincere. "I was informed by those in control that they were aware of my 20 previous films being identical. Multiple times. Though basic, it was of poor quality." His remarks sliced through the glitter of Hollywood like a knife. Notoriety wasn't Murphy's goal. All signs pointed to his continued survival. After that, his defining film, Hell and Back, came out. Based on his autobiography, it was published in 1955. However, he preferred not to act out his own role. He was under the impression that others would see him as trying to capitalize on his military background. He went so far as to suggest Tony Curtis for the lead role. No one else, however, could pull it off correctly. In the midst of it all, he nearly broke. A significant change was seen by director Jesse Hibbs. In westerns, Murphy usually obeyed orders, but he grew overly preoccupied with details in this film. The colors to utilize for the holes were dictated by him to the artisans. They appeared as though they had recently been hit by an explosion. Each soldier had his uniform examined. Because he had witnessed bombings firsthand, he gave the special effects crew a detailed description of what they should look like. He was dissatisfied with the way Hollywood resolved every issue. As he reflected on the Anzio War, the rain began to fall down. On the screen, it appeared as sunshine. Although the actual battle for the Khmer Pocket took place in muddy snow, the cinematic version made it look too easy. He felt remorseful because of this. Everyone thought it was great. Universal Studios' highest-grossing film was To Hell and Back. For 20 years, it was #1, until Jaws came out in 1975. What we had here was a conflict between two men, not a passionate love tale. Its financial success was undeniable. Murphy, however, collapsed just as the movie theater industry was thriving. Dreams similar to the ones he had left behind in Europe began to resurface in his mind. Max Hastings, a historian, later characterized Murphy as a epic psychological mess. Reliving those confrontations for moviegoers didn't help him feel better. It exacerbated his scars. He became famous thanks to the film, but he was also trapped by the false memories it conjured up of his past. Compared to the Hollywood version, his was different. His story doesn't end there. Murph was quietly composing music. His collaboration with Scott Turner on 18 country tunes spanned from 1962 to 1970. Composed in 1962 at Murphy's Ranch, it went on to become their most popular single. It was a tale of melancholy and abandonment. The music evoked a reaction in me. A record of it exists. Performed by around 60 artists fluent in multiple languages. Furthermore, there are A-listers: Dean Martin, Jimmy Dean, and Porter Wagner. And further tune emerged after a little pause. "Whenever I hear the howling of the wind outside my California home," Murphy remarked at one point. The passage was later adapted into a song by Dean Martin and Eddie Arnold. "When the wind blows in Chicago." He was skilled at rhyme and flow, as most people are. He created songs during the war, one of which was featured in his book, but he credited a fictional soldier. He was married to the young star Wanda in 1949 and was known as Carrion. He was a military hero, a movie star, and an American symbol of courage. However, beneath all the fame and fortune, he struggled with addiction and mental instability. Ricks was a hopeful, 21-year-old, who fell head over heels for the picture of Murphy on the cover of a magazine. However, her hero husband had more than just a wounded heart. He was also worried that Murph wouldn't be safe at home. The press portrayed them as an idyllic couple, and Wanda was referred to as "his little Hendrix honey" in the articles. He had disturbing recollections of violent acts and couldn't sleep. When he fantasized about going to war, he would occasionally threaten to shoot her. However, the reality was terrifying. He advised her to leave Hollywood for Texas, but his erratic behavior and anxiety prevented him from experiencing even the most ordinary day. "When I turned to kiss him, he was gone," she remarked on one occasion. Not him. She fled for her life just 7 months after they were married. Mental abuse led her to seek a divorce in April 1950. It was finalized a year later, and Murphy remarried late that same year. They had a son, Skipper, in 1954 and another son, Terry, In 1952, things seemed better for a while. However, a different kind of storm was brewing. Pamela Archer, a former Army nurse and current flight attendant, seemed like she would understand him. Their home was a haven of terror and anxiety due to Pamela's intense religious interest. Following the birth of their second son, she forced Murphy a tough choice: remain married but live your own life. He was legally obligated to do so, but he preferred to live his own life. He tried his best to shield his sons from Pamela's radical ideology, since he didn't want them to suffer because he was emotionally distant. However, he still had to be a dad and pay the bills. The trauma of the war had left him unable to cope. In spite of his best intentions, he was unable to connect with his children on an emotional level, which hindered his ability to be a decent father. He suffered from insomnia, nightmares, and unpredictable mood swings. He slept with a revolver under his pillow every night. He publicly spoke about them and referred to them as his joy. "If I didn't have Pam and the boys, I think I'd still be happy living alone," he stated at one point. Sadly, those pleasant times did not endure. It repeatedly hurt him. In the 1960s, Murphy reached his breaking point. He had intended to end his relationship with Pamela, but he reconsidered, not because of her, but because of his boys. The prospect of leaving them scared him, so he hid out in the garage. Murphy was kicked out of the house, even though it became his home. "People didn't know I was living in the garage," he claimed in 1971, adding that the outside world believed the family was united. Unfortunately, Murphy's troubles didn't only ruin his home life and finances, they also caused his children to never see him. In the moments leading up to his death, he was speaking with divorce attorneys. He was searching for that adrenaline, maybe trying to reawaken the energy of fight, but he lost it all, approximately $3 million, which is now over $20 million. It wasn't a joke. A lot of money would bet on him at once. To protect his youthful admirers from being misled, he would never endorse booze or cigarettes. However, behind closed doors, he was giving in to an unmanageable drug habit. His post-traumatic stress disorder was more than just mental. It had a serious effect on his dependence on sleeping pills. 2 years after the war ended, he started taking Placidil to stop experiencing dreams. It took a week of isolation in a hotel room in the mid-1960s for him to finally kick the habit. His body was paralyzed with terror as he fought for freedom. The intensity of his desire to take control of his life was overwhelming, and he would always go to sleep with a pounding heart. Under his pillow rested a loaded .45 caliber revolver, a gift from the renowned Western actor Gary Cooper. However, he failed to see its true value. It served as a protective shield, pointed at his first wife upon her awakening one morning. Even in a hotel room, he continued to practice. No place felt safe. He thought the battle was ongoing. Audi Murphy's acting career ended in 1968. Up until recently, he was one of. His former salary of $100,000 each film has dropped to as low as $20,000 due to producers' realization that he was in severe need of money. Despite this, he continues to amass more accolades than any other American military hero. Murphy refused to accept easy money, even though he was approached with lucrative arrangements by beverage and tobacco firms. He refused because, as he put it, "I couldn't do that to the kids." His principles were more important to him than money. In 1961, his TV show Whispering Smith was already failing. By the late 1960s, the phone stopped ringing. His film company was based out of the hotel basement. Due to the financial difficulties, his final film, A Time for Dying, was not released in the U.S. until 1982, 11 years after his death. Following his demise, Murphy compared his situation to that of an elderly prostitute, lamenting the loss of his pride. As things deteriorated, Murphy sought out perilous business dealings in order to prolong his life. In 1967, he invested nearly all of his $260,000 funds in an Algerian oil firm. Following the Six-Day War, he lost everything in a single night. Hurt and desperate, he sought any opportunity that could help him pay off his debt by 1971. The funds ran out, though, so he spent his days phoning and asking for deals that could save him. He even let Bob Hope buy his favorite ranch. He lived in the garage, away from his wife, so he could be near his youngsters. The guy who had fought the Nazis was now facing collectors, bills, and bankruptcy. On top of that, the government was following him. The Internal Revenue Service started investigating unpaid taxes that he had when he filed for bankruptcy in 1968. To claim he was indebted to a large amount of money. It saddened me that the government, which had bestowed 28 medals upon him, was now pursuing him for payment. He compared it to dying in battle. The oil firm lost money, and their acting career bombed. Despite being in a great deal of pain, sinking, and time running out, Murphy persisted in continuing his investments. A buddy later revealed that Murphy had lost approximately $3 million in gaming losses cumulatively. On May 28, 1971, he boarded a twin-engine Aero Commander 680 Super at Atlanta's Dalba Peachtree Airport for a business trip to Virginia. He was accompanied by 5 business partners on this journey, and the goal was to cut down on travel time. Despite the gloomy weather forecast, the flight continued for over 2 hours without a flight plan. Problems arose unexpectedly, but the pilot's impressive record of 8,000 flying hours gave him the benefit of the doubt. However, there was a catch. He could only fly that type of plane for 6 hours. To make matters worse, he wasn't rated for instruments. It was illegal for him to fly through clouds, rain, or fog, and he had no clue how to make it through. Even though they flew into it, the weather turned treacherous, with heavy fog engulfing the mountains. The clouds made it hard to see the Blue Ridge Mountains, which were only 3 miles away. In situations that required him to master all of his instruments, Butler attempted to fly by sight. It wasn't in him, but he persisted nevertheless. At one point, he even attempted to land on a highway near G, Virginia. A circle approximately 150 feet above ground level showed the plane evading other planes. Trees. Following that, it continued westward into the mountains. At 12:08 p.m., the jet had a devastating crash into 2,700-foot-high Brush Mountain. Instantly killed all on board. Murphy's corpse was discarded from the site of the disaster, which was engulfed in flames. It took 3 days for the crash site to be located. Search planes were delayed due to inclement weather, and no one had a clue as to where to search because no flight plan had been established. The search involved 31 aircraft. The wreckage was located 4 miles high in the mountains. The National Transportation Safety Board did not disclose its report for 1 year. The reason for this was that Butler continued to fly visually despite weather conditions requiring instrument guiding. Both engines failed in March 1970 due to a lack of fuel, and on that occasion as well, Butler attempted to land on a highway but was unsuccessful. This should have served as a major warning sign, but he was inexperienced and had crashed an airplane the year before, so it didn't help. In the aftermath of the crash, many speculated about possible conspiracies, with some attributing the incident to mischief and others suggesting that the government had assassinated Murphy in an effort to silence him. He, however, stood up for both his own and the troops' rights. Being treated unfairly? However, none of the theories were supported by evidence. The pilot made an ill-advised decision that could have been prevented. His family was constantly on the move. Pamela, his wife, sued 16 individuals for $10 million. Colorado Aviation, the pilot's estate, and others are among them. A jury awarded the family $2 million after 4 lengthy years of litigation, with $5 million going toward harm, roughly $14.6 million in today's dollars. After the case debunked all the conspiracy theories, the court ruled that Colorado Aviation was negligent for allowing an unprepared pilot to operate a complex jet in hazardous conditions. Despite the ups and downs of the case, Murphy's burial at Arlington National Cemetery on June 7, 1971, was anything but extravagant. He simply requested a plain white tombstone, the same as any other hero. That was his wish. His gravestone lists his medals: the Medal of Honor, the Distinguished Service Cross, and 2 more. Every year, a large number of visitors visit his burial. In fact, the cemetery is so crowded that they had to find a method to circumvent the tree that casts a shadow over his resting place. His family declined the graveyard's offer to add gold leaf to the 3 purple hearts and 2 silver stars, as that would have been his wish.